Chapter 13. Plans, Preparations, and Strategies. Okay. So what is it now, Dr. Gobnash? You've developed a talisman of earth shaking that will allow me to flatten the mountains of Ascos around the Lady Lusomi's ears? Nothing quite so eye-catching, Highness. It's only that I thought, given Disicoman's defection, I ought to pay special attention to the lands that were his, watching for people who might have come back there for his forces. The king went alert, his posture straightening slightly. Ah, messengers. I would guess that your presence here means you found something? It was not entirely straightforward. Most who had come home were simple louts, knowing only that they had to come back to see their little plots. Even the most intensive questioning revealed nothing. One, however, let slip that he had heard certain ones had been called to Rudishin especially, though he knew no more than that. He knew no names for certain, could only guess at some of them. Having further direction to focus my questions, I was able to fashion a list of likely candidates. Of these, most had taken their families and disappeared. I was able to find and seize 2, and one of those 2 finally admitted that he had carried a message to a certain Lord Comsalit. Though the man did not know what was in the message, he guessed that Disicoman had written to tell him what happened to his own son, and likely to invite Comsalit to join him. And now, Highness, it's a matter for you. The ordinary people I can deal with, but when it comes to the lords, I can only gather evidence. Once I have done it, the matter is in your hands. Well, continue to gather evidence. I scarcely think that a great number of my lords will desert me for Ascos, but even a few of them being dilatory coming to my service could be something on a hindrance. I shall have to consider how to approach Comsalit. Archers from ambush? That worked so well for Disicoman, didn't it? Perhaps something more subtle. The archer made his way to the field's edge, then stepped out. He didn't call out. He did not want to startle nor alarm the woman. She called to the ox and turned the plow at the far end of the field, and even then, she didn't notice him at once. A few paces later, she saw him, and her hand went to the dagger at her waist. She took in his appearance, clothing and all, and said bluntly, "What do you want?" He warned himself to go carefully. This was a woman who had recently lost a husband and was trying her best to keep herself and 3 children alive. "I want to come to an agreement with you. Will you listen to me?" She sneered. She'd had sufficient time alone with her bitter thoughts to be able to put sincere feeling into that expression. "Oh, man of whence, those countrymen slew my husband in battle. What sort of agreement might we 2 make?" This alarmed him. He'd expected suspicion, even dislike for his race, but not that she would near blame him as a wenchman for her husband's death at the hands of other wenchman. He'd learned long ago to be careful just what feelings he let show on his face. "I propose a bargain to suit us both. I need food and a roof over my head until Bloody Narnish," he used a nickname on purpose, "begins to move again next year. You need help in running this farm so you and your children should not go hungry. I will supply you that help if you supply me with food and shelter." Her face remained grim. "And of course, sharing my bed is part of this bargain?" "No, your bed is your own. If you wish, I will swear whatever oath you like that I will let you be." She relaxed, but only a little. "And no man has ever broken an oath before, of course." He spread his hands. He'd already dropped the notion of telling her he could have taken her unawares, disposed of the children, and taken over the farm. That would only make her more wary. You must believe what you must believe. But I promised you the only agreement I wish is the one I stated. She was still not quite easy in her mind, but she could see she was turning the matter over and looking at it from all sides. All right, she said grudgingly, but mind your manners, Wentzman. Delphi helped willingly, fetching and carrying, while Disicomend's men built huts for themselves. They could well have stayed the season in tents, but morale was already a problem for a small group of men in the midst of people still getting used to not thinking of themselves as enemy foreigners. The camp, like any group of soldiers, was full of rumors. Most were laughable, but some required serious intervention, such as this morning. Men, he had told his gathered army, I don't know, nor do I wish to know, the source of the story that Dr. Gobnesh has laid a curse on us all. And, if you use your heads for purposes other than a handy place to put your helmet, you will realize that this is foolishness. If he had the ability to lay a curse on us, don't you think there would be more likely targets? We are but a minor nuisance to Narnash. His real concern is the Lady Lusomi and her aides. A curse on us would accomplish little. A curse on her would put an end to his problems for good. He stood looking at them for a bit. Now I know that forbidding you to pass rumors is like forbidding water to flow downhill. However, rumors which have a deleterious effect on our ability to be an effective fighting force are not allowed. I am giving orders for your commanders to take names of anyone heard repeating rumors, and if I find myself out here again having to repeat this lecture, the punishment may well go beyond extra drill and fatigues. Delphi's eyes were wide. Those silly stories the men tell, are they that dangerous? It would hardly seem so, would it? But think. Stories like this touch a little fear in everyone. Suppose for one or two, the fear is too much and they desert. Every desertion makes the others more fearful because we are so few. And how many rumors will it take until we are down so few men that we cannot fight effectively? I see. There's lots of things to think about if you want to lead an army, aren't there? There certainly are. Oh yes, Ma says I'm to invite you to come home for supper tomorrow. Tomorrow? Tell her I may not be able to come tomorrow. But would the next day do? He could actually come tomorrow. It was only that he did not want to seem to be leaping to her orders. Thockel had a fair bit of luck with the dwarf's bones, since Lucy was looking after his food and quarters, his expenses were not high. Therefore he took one of his histories Lucy had lent him to have a scribe copy it for him. Since his memories of the scribe who had first taught him reading were still negative, he took the scroll to a different scribe, a certain Herstragel of Garas. Herstragel was a tall, slender man, with snow-white hair and trimmed beard, and a very prominent nose. And if his name had not proclaimed him a foreigner, his features would have done so. Thockel held up the scroll and he had borrowed and asked, "How much would it cost me to have a copy of this made?" "Let me see it." Herstragel held out a long, slender hand. Thockel handed over the scroll and watched with interest as the scribe set it on the reading stand, then rapidly rolled it from beginning to end and back again. He clearly couldn't have read a word of it, but he looked up at Thockel and said, 40 silver. "But you didn't read it." The scribe frowned at him. "Young man," he said crisply, "I wouldn't presume to tell you your business. Please do me the courtesy of believing that I know my own." He then softened slightly. "You see, by merely glancing through the scroll, I can see how long it is, what margins are left, and the size of the letters. From that, I can estimate the amount of paper, ink, and time that would be required. Of course, with such a relatively well-known work as this, I already know most of these things, so the price is 40 silver. Thakkel had, before coming, asked Lucy what a reasonable cost would be, and this price was within the acceptable range. However, not to bargain would be strange, even somewhat discourteous. 30. In the end, the price agreed on was 38 silver, and having handed it over, Thakkel continued to look around the shop. Several sheets of paper were hung here and there about the shop, samples of books written in various styles. The first one he looked at appeared to be from a horse doctor's manual. The next was incomprehensible. Though it was written in the characters of the common language, the words were not the common language at all. What's this? That? That is an interesting one. That is the ancient writings of the Kundalini, in the old language of Quandal, but transliterated into the common alphabet. Oh, really? And are there many works in the old tongues that have been transliterated? No, not really. You know how various languages have sounds which some of us find difficult to get our tongues around? To transliterate, one has to either ignore such sounds or insert letter combinations to represent them. This one is mostly a curio. One who really knows the ancient writings of the Kundalini would be able to make it out. One who did not know the language would get a very mistaken notion about it from reading the scroll, from which that bit was excerpted. I see. Historical, however, was often his favorite topic. Here's something perhaps a little more interesting. He pointed to another page written in what looked to Thakkel like rows of shapes and squiggles, some done in red ink. This is the priest writing of Gunwakba. It's called that because the priests used it to record holy documents. Later on, of course, it became more generally used. This is a bit of one of their king's history. And before you speak, I can't read it. Not properly, anyway. There are 600 or so signs in the alphabet. A scribe in that land would find failing memory a disaster. He smiled at his own humor. So Thakkel left the scribe's shop with many new thoughts, all the way from alphabets with 600 letters to men he'd known would scratch their names on walls or cartwheels or anything handy just to make themselves known. After a week in winter quarters, Thakkel was bored. After 2 weeks, he was very bored. He went out to a wine shop one evening and got into a bit of a game. His heart wasn't in it, though, and after losing a couple pieces of silver, he pulled back. A hulking laborer sneered at him. "Can't take it, eh, boy? Better run along home and let the men do the gaming." Most times, Thakkel would let such jibes go by without comment, but he had just had enough wine in him, added to the general boredom, to say, "Must be comforting to have no mind. Saves time having to think like the rest of us." The hulking laborer himself was drunk enough he'd had to think it over before he understood he'd been insulted. Then he roared something unintelligible and swung at Thakkel, who had been standing smiling, waiting for him to act. In a fight like this, Thakkel was happy to use his fists, unless someone went for a weapon. Of course, the wine shop was a bit crowded, and there was more than one fellow present who objected to having either an ox driver or a laborer bouncing off them, and were willing to do some pushing and hitting themselves. The wine shop owner, with his truncheon, was unequal to the task of restoring order, but the city watch came in at the end. For the task at hand, they used spear butts. For the task at hand, they used spear butts, though if anyone gave them too much trouble, they wouldn't hesitate to use spear points. Because of his status, they did not merely knock Thoughtful in the head and drop him into prison to await the magistrate's displeasure. Instead, they knocked him on the head. He was too drunk and wild to listen to reason, and held him for the lady Lusami to deal with. She was not happy. You make matters awkward, Thoughtful. Look at you. I am supposed to be grateful you've never found it necessary to cheat at gambling, or things might be worse. I don't suppose you know what the fight was about, do you? He didn't lose his smile. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time? It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Oh, Wardarsh Garden Guide. What next? Will it seem the right thing to do? Right thing to go and trim the beards of Wardarsh's priests? Now that's an idea. She found herself half an instant from grabbing something, anything, and throwing it at him. Drawing a deep breath, she calmed herself. Can't you find something useful to do? He sighed. I said, I suppose. Every called up farmer or potter or stable hand has his farm or his trade or his occupation to go back to. But what about the ox driver with the Talisman? He's left at loose ends until the next campaign season starts. Well, you'd better find yourself something to do. Write a history of Patanji or something. As it is, I'm going to fine you 50 silver. That is 30 for the damage to the White Dove's rest, and 10 silver for the innkeeper, plus 10 for the city. And the next time, I will be very hard on you. He grinned. Yes, he would. So I must either find something worthwhile to do, or continue to have good luck with the dwarf's bones? She managed to hold her face in a serious and grim expression until they ushered him out. He came on Shapa Kalish a little while later, wandering around the market. The merchant was selling little toys, spinning tops, dancing figures, and flutes, which, when one blew into them, produced the sounds of a whole band, including strings and drums. The mere sight of the small merchant had fascinated many children, and his marvelous wares had completed the deed. "Ah, Thoughtful!" he cried. "Here you are, out and free! There were those willing to wager you'd be hung by your heels in the dungeon." Thoughtful grinned a little ruefully. "I think the only fact that I can use the talisman saved me from decorating the front gate with my head." "Ah, the course of young love," said Shapa Kalish, almost as if quoting someone. "Only in silly ballads do folk like me come to wed princesses. And then only after someone discovers that they're long-lost princes themselves." He picked up one of the figures and, turning it over, discovered on the bottom each foot had a set of marks. "What are these? Some kind of writing?" "Yes, indeed. They say, if I remember correctly, Theric Havel, which is the name of the owner of the workshop in which they are made. Please don't tell anyone. Most people think of those marks as parts of the magic that makes them move. It adds to the exotic appeal." He looked up at Thoughtful. "Still interested in reading and writing, are you? Perhaps you should do a history of your own peoples." "Ah, yes. The Glories of Old Patanji by Thoughtful the Ox Driver. One can see the attraction. No, my writing is likely to be more in the lines of the scribble I saw on the prison wall. Here stood the misfortunate Minorio, even including some such non-word as misfortunate. I did wonder a bit whether Minorio was hung for some terrible crime. Most likely he was given 10 lashes for public drunkenness and rioting." "Ah, how true. The human mind can always find a way and means to call up the most interesting happening from the most mundane evidence. Now, please hand me that dancer, lest people get the feeling that the magic wears out so soon that they can only do one small dance." He stood watching while the little man wound up his figures and sent them spinning and dancing again. Next time I get bored, I'd better get you to take me through the hidden ways to the town of Helifriad to take the garrison commander by surprise and truss him up in his underwear and take the town for Lucy. Sheppa Kalish gave him a look. You'd best be joking about that. I don't suppose you could take me and 100 others to Helifriad. They're going to be storming some form of garrison towns to start off the campaigning season, mostly to relieve the supply problems a bit. A small party might be able to do the thing with a lot less losses than a storming party. I hadn't really been serious until just this moment when I got wondering, why not? First reason is that it could take 30, perhaps 40 through the hidden ways. Unless we hold together physically, there's too much chance someone, likely more than one, will be lost along the way. Thakkel sighed. It was too easy a notion for it to be possible. Oh well. He had been leaning against the wall, and now he was scraping with his thumbnail at a small fault in the mud brick, turning it into the letter TH. Misfortunate Thakkel. Suddenly the letter brought an idea to his mind. What if, one morning, the residents of Helifriad woke up to find something like "The winds of Ascos blow bitter," written on various walls in all parts of the town, including walls behind locked doors. Remember, few people can read. But if these things are widespread enough, people who will see them who can at least puzzle out a few letters, someone will be able to read fairly well. Market rumor will take care of the rest. Sheppa Kalish shrugged. A 9 days wonder? Perhaps a little more if the garrison commander decides to turn the town upside down in search of rebels and seditionists. For true and sure, the notion had caught Thakkel, however firmly. But what if one came back in, 4 days, a week, and repeated the effort? Always being careful to put the phrase in some locked places, such as garrison stores and the like. And returning for how many times and to what eventual purpose? As often as necessary. I hadn't thought that out altogether, and the eventual purpose would be so when the army comes to summon them to surrender, lest the winds of Ascos blow, the garrison will be 1/4 beaten before they start. Sheppa Kalish grinned. You have a wicked, deceitful mind. Yes, I will help, though there may be some limitations on our work. What preparations will you need to make? Preparations? Yes. You hadn't thought to do this all with your thumbnail, had you? Even tough thumbnails such as yours are not... even such tough thumbnails as yours are not up to such a hard usage. Paint of some sort. And brushes. I'll have to do some shopping. Before you go off to do all this shopping, what do you intend to tell the Lady Lucy of the Fairlocks? Fairlocks? Wardosh Garden Guide. You know, she has dark and curly hair. Oh, you'd noticed? But a fair-haired lover always seems to do better in the romances. He waved a hand to quiet Thakkel's immediate protest and went on. Lover or not, what will she say about this plan? This made Thakkel stop and think. You're right, I can't tell her. She wouldn't have me locked up, just have bodyguards with me night and day. Suppose I tell her we two are going off for a little? Visiting other marketplaces? No lie there, and we'll be back soon. And the Lady Lucy has spies in every town, particularly the ones garrisoned by Narnash. So you just happen to buy some paint and brushes and come back just about the time she's learning about some mysterious writing appearing on walls? Thakkel shrugged. She'll probably scold me, and maybe set nursemaids to watching me. When that comes about, I'll see what I can do. No, but perhaps we might put off the day of reckoning a bit. It would be nothing particularly strange if a merchant were to go about looking for paint and brushes. The timing of our going and returning, and the time of mysterious writings on the walls, will most certainly make her suspicious. Though perhaps we can delay that a bit. Ah, good. When do we leave? Such a rush. Give me at least 2 days, possibly 3, to gather supplies, and don't get into any mischief in the meantime. Mischief? Me? It has come to my attention that the vile traitor, Disickelman Radashin, has sent communications to various of my loyal lords, summoning them to join him in treason. It would be well received if all lords were to report such communications to me. The king looked at the scribe. And to put on the usual titles, and so on, then leave them for my signing. Address 1 copy to each of the persons on the list you were given. Yes, Highness. The scribe, being seated for the dictation, could not bow properly, but did bob his head down towards his writing table and back up again. Dr. Gobnash appeared in the king's audience chamber. The king smiled at him. So, you have bad news again for me, Dr. Gobnash? Unfortunately, yes. It seems a sizable number of young men with no family ties have been slipping across the border to Ascos. We have managed to catch a few of them, and it seems they were leaving, not because they were summoned, but because of the notion of serving Radition appealed to them. They were all young and foolish, the sort that might dare a lot for some whim. Many of them would be poor soldiers once the excitement wears off, but even a few additions to Radishin's numbers are a matter of some concern. Concern? Yes, indeed. I'll have men patrolling the frontiers with orders to take any such for punishment. Good enough. So as far as it goes, Highness. But I have another notion. Suppose that among the newcomers to Radishin, a few were fellows with specific orders. Ah, yes, the king smiled. An assassination would be very useful. Even a failed attempt would force Radishin to look very carefully at all volunteers who come to him. I have a further plan, one which will cause difficulties, at least to the Lady Lusomi. I'll keep you informed as the plan matures. Still no talisman of earth-shaking, eh? The king was near jovial. Regretfully, no, Highness. But I have something only a little less effective. And that is the end of the story. So,